Hey everyone, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over all the books that I read in the month of April. I do want to apologize for this video being way late. I started out the month of May being very ill. I still am not feeling 100%, but today is the first day that I've actually had the energy to get out of bed. So I took full advantage and I did my makeup and I'm filming 2 videos today. So again, I am so sorry for the late videos. But life happened and it is what it is. So the month of April was very weird for me. I started reading Winter Garden in the end of March and planned on it being my first book that I finished in April. However, I was just not feeling it. I could not get into it. It was just not for me. So I put it down and read others. But due to that, I did not finish my first book until April 11th. However, I still read 9 books. So I got caught up for sure. And even though I read 9 books this April, I read 11 books last April, but I've still read more books overall this year than I have around this time last year. So I'm still feeling pretty good about my reading goals this year. So out of those 9 books, they were all female authors and they were a total of 3,243 pages read, which is about an average of 108 pages read per day. I had 1 5-star read, 6 4-star reads, and 2 3-star reads, so it was an okay reading month for me. So the first book I read this month was The Heart Principle, and I gave this book 4 stars. I have now completely finished the Heart Principle trilogy, which I'm really excited about. I'm glad I read this trilogy. I really enjoyed it. There wasn't much to say about this book. It wasn't my favorite. I still think The Kiss Quotient was my favorite one, and then Kai in The Bride Test was my favorite male character. So this book, it was good, but it didn't stick with me how the other 2 did. But I still gave this one 4 stars. Next, I read The Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis. This book was definitely a lot different than I was expecting it to be. It's a historical fiction, and if y'all know, I love historical fiction, but I am very picky with my historical fictions. It wasn't boring or anything, but it definitely could have been better in my opinion. I still gave it 4 stars because it wasn't terrible, and I did enjoy the storyline. I thought it was good. Will it stick with me? No. Is it my favorite historical fiction? No. This book has 2 perspectives. It starts in 1919 and then it has a perspective of 50 years later, and I just really enjoyed it. I liked the aesthetic that I was reading about. I haven't read any books like that at all, so it was really fascinating in that way. I really enjoyed it. 4 stars. Next, I read The Younger Wife by Sally Hepworth, and honestly, this book flopped. It was a big flop for me. It just kind of bored me. I gave it 3 stars. I just felt like it was kind of weird. It was basically about a man whose wife has really bad like Alzheimer's or dementia, and he ends up falling in love with a way younger wife, and even though he's still married to his wife, he's going to go to like the courthouse or something and basically divorce her because she's not all there, because she's in a nursing home with Alzheimer's. And honestly, I can't remember what else happens because it didn't stick with me. It just was kind of meh, so I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, and this book was everything. I loved this book. I learned a lot about the Japanese and Korean cultures, and I enjoyed that this book took place over 4 generations. I thought that was really cool. I enjoyed seeing the generations evolved based off the years that it takes place, and I just really enjoyed it. I read this book pretty quickly. I did have this on audio, which helped me get through it. Not that it was boring, but it definitely is a longer book, but it was very enjoyable. I probably won't watch the series because for one, I don't have Apple TV, and I'm not going to pay to get Apple TV when most TV show adaptations are not as good as the book anyways. However, I have heard that the TV show is really good. Anyways, I gave this book 4 stars. Next, I read Heartbones by Colleen Hoover, and y'all, I do not know why this book is not talked about more. I freaking loved this book. I gave this book 5 stars. This book is so underrated. I feel like it's talked about a little bit here and there in some of the book groups I'm in, not really on Book Talk, and honestly, I don't know why this book of hers is not talked about as much as it should be, because this was fantastic. fantastic. I will say it started out a little slow for me, and if you read it, you're probably like, what? It started out slow for you? I don't know. It started out a lot different than I was expecting, and I think because of that I was a little bit turned off. After I was like 50 pages in, I was like, oh, this is going to be a 4-star book for me. But I got through it really quickly and changed my rating to a 5-star because it was fantastic. This book follows a girl named Bea whose mom is a drug addict, and she does not know her dad because they were a one-night stand 19 years ago. And she comes home from work one day and her mom is passed out on the couch. She thinks, come to find out, she OD'd and actually passed away. And so she reaches out to her father, who she doesn't really talk to anymore, but he does send child support. But she doesn't see it because her mom's a drug addict. Anyways, so she ends up contacting her dad and she moves to Texas with her dad, and there's a romance involved, and it's just such a cute story and so underrated. This book definitely needs to be talked about more than it is. I loved it so much. Is it my favorite Colleen Hoover? I still think Regretting You is my favorite, but this is a very close second. This was fantastic. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. Next, I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I loved this book. This was so cute. I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. I definitely didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would based off all the hype that's going around on TikTok and Bookstagram and Facebook book groups that I'm in, but it was cute. I really enjoyed the love story in this. I thought it was really different and cute. But this book follows a college professor and a PhD candidate, and they start fake dating because her best friend likes her ex-boyfriend but won't date him because it's like the girl code. So she, Olive, tries to convince her friend On to date her ex because she has moved on, and so that's when she starts fake dating a college professor. Well, he's not her professor, but he is a professor at the college, and then they end up falling in love, and he falls for her first, which I loved. You don't normally read about stories where the man falls first, so I really enjoyed that. Gave this one 4 stars. Next, I read All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover, and this book I gave 4 stars. This was the first Colleen Hoover that I've read that I gave 4 stars. It just didn't do it for me. It was still really good, but I was just kind of bored in this one, I'm not gonna lie. There was definitely some things where I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. It was just a different storyline than I was expecting, so because of that I gave it 4 stars. But this book follows a woman who comes home early to surprise her fiance, and when she gets to the outside of his apartment, there's a man standing there, and she's wondering why he's standing there, and come to find out her fiance is in there cheating on her with the man's girlfriend that's outside. And then her name's Quinn, and Quinn ends up talking to the girl's boyfriend that's outside, and then there's 2 different storylines. There's then and there's now, which is like 7-year difference. And Quinn ends up marrying Graham. But then they have some marriage issues, so we go throughout the book hearing about the marriage issues and resolving them, and it wasn't my favorite, but I still enjoyed it, so I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon. This book definitely did not scare me how I was expecting. It's a horror book, but it didn't scare me as I was expecting. I gave this book 4 stars. This book was really spooky and good. This book follows 2 different timelines. Yeah, that's the word, timelines. 1978 and 2019. And it's kind of hard to explain, and my camera's about to die, so that's kind of why I'm like hurrying this up. But basically in 1978 it follows Violet, who lives with her grandparents and her brother, and I think she's 12, and then her grandma brings in a new little girl who's going to be her sister, and they don't know her name, but they call her Iris. And then in 2019 we follow Lizzie, who is older at this point, and we end up finding out which one of the girls Lizzie is from the 1978 timeline, and I'm just saying I did not see that coming, and because of that it made me bump my rating up to a 4. This book was pretty good. I highly recommend this one. The last book I read was Winter Garden. I had to find the audiobook to get me to finish this book because this book flopped so bad. I love Kristen Hanna, but this book just did not do it for me. I don't know why, but I just did not enjoy it as much as I was expecting. But basically it's about a mom who doesn't really love her daughters. Like, she's just very cold, and her daughters are older. They're like in their late 30s, I believe, and they never really contacted her, but their dad dies, and his dying wish is for them to have a relationship with their mom. And so they've tried really hard to form a relationship with her, and her way of forming a relationship is by telling fairy tales. But come to find out, fairy tales are not actually tales, and I don't want to go anymore because I don't want to spill anything, but the storyline's good. It just, for me personally, I just was not feeling it, was not vibing with it, just not my favorite Kristen Hanna, so because of that I gave it 3 stars. So as you can see, my TBR that I posted and what I actually read in April are completely different, and that is because in the middle of April I went book shopping and I got a bunch of gems, and I decided that I wanted to read them instead of sticking to my TBR. So that's that. However, some books that were on my TBR in April I have pushed onto my TBR in May. You will see that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified every time I upload, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!